morning, guys. Looks like people are still joining in. .22 in the usual strength is about 60, right? And is my screen visible? Is there any buffering or am I audible? Okay, I'm audible. Ujjwal says I'm audible. Great. We'll wait for a minute. If no more people join, then we'll start a session. But before that, guys who are already there, can you just tell me what? I mean, I guess C++ was done for you, right, for about 2 days. So just tell me what are the things that you have learned in C++. Okay, Nishchit says data types, functions, storage classes, pointers, and arrays. Okay, these are things that were already there in C. So, except the basic syntax of C and C++, I don't think so. There is much difference, right? So, we'll go into something that is very specific to C++ today. Okay. Because if you have doubts in this, we would have already discussed almost similar things in C. So I don't think so. You'll have a lot of questions regarding these topics. It's pretty much the same when you compare C++ with C when it comes to these topics. In functions, you learn overloading and overriding and all that. Okay, great. Fine. Guys, I've just posted a link for attendance. Just click on the link and fill that form. Okay, we'll start where we have about 40 people, so we'll try to start. Okay, so C++. I'll just start with some basics. Okay, so we'll just see what's the major difference of C++ when compared to C, and like how it is applied in the real world today. And then we'll move on to some C++ specific topics, right? So first thing is, they usually don't ask these nowadays, but you can never tell anything about the MCQs these days. So Dennis Ritchie is the father of C, right? So who's father of C++? Any idea? Yeah, Brian Shorstrop is the father of C++. Awesome. So Brian Shorstrop is, I guess if you remember, he's also part of developing C, but mainly he's known for developing C++. If you remember when I was telling you about C, I told Brian Shorstrop was one of the person who left the team of developers of C, and then he started his own venture. So that was C. So why is it C++? Or why not? Because after A it is B, then it is C, then why not D? Why C++? why C became C++. Anyone? It was taken from C, advanced version, improved version of C. Or I can say it is nothing but C with OOPS concepts, right? Or C with object oriented concepts. Okay, C++ is nothing but C plus OOPS concepts. Okay. Or if you see the major difference, C is something called as top-down approach. In C++, bottom-top approach is what we follow. C is a subset of C. C is a subset of C++. C plus is a superset of C. Similarly, in C we followed something called as procedural approach. It's called as a procedural language. But when it comes to C++, it's both procedural and object-oriented language. Also remember, C++ is not completely object-oriented language. For example, I can blindly say that Python or even Java is not completely object-oriented, but Python is a completely object-oriented language. Okay, whereas C++ is not completely object-oriented language. The reason being the use of pointers, because pointers is one thing that stops the features of object-oriented features basically. That's why C++ is not a complete object-oriented language. We can call it a hybrid language of procedural and object-oriented languages. Okay, and yeah, this is, I guess everybody will know, C++ can run all the C codes, but C will not be able to, if it's a C compiler, will not be able to run C++ code. Next we'll see some difference. So if I'm writing a normal program to print something, so C program would be hash include std.h and then the main function, then the printf function. And if the main function is int, then return. When it comes to C++, the header file changes. It becomes iostream, and using namespace std, then send the main function, and we use something called a cout in we can use cout in C also, so not an issue. So cout, whatever, and just make sure you make a note of the syntax for cout, because we'll be using a lot of output statements, so cout is important there. And we send some message and then retracted. Okay, fine. Next we'll see some basic application where they use C++. Okay, so one of the application is using the operating systems. They have upgraded most of the recent operating systems with C++. Web browsers mainly, Chrome, Opera, Safari, or Thunderbird, all these web browsers, they use C++. Chrome nowadays they don't use C++ anymore, but initially they did. Some graphic interface applications like Adobe and then Winamp and other stuff. So we'll see some real world applications of C++. So they used to create games, some GUI based applications, like I said, web browser, for graphics, for DB software, database software, operating systems, enterprise softwares, some applications like Solid Edge and stuff, and some compilers also. Okay, whereas these are the questions they ask you in PI, like where is C++ used, where is C used. So it's good that if you know these things, so you'll be able to answer it in a blink, right? So you can make a note of these things, or you can take a screenshot. That's up to you. I'll not elaborate on this particular part because I know you'll be able to elaborate these things yourself. Right, we'll move on to the next one. That is, if I want to use structure in C++, how will I use it? So I've written both the programs using structure in C and using structure in C++. Okay. So what are the major difference that you see here? Apart from the header files that we use, what are the other differences you see? I guess my chat box is working because I don't see anybody posting anything in the chat. Okay. Keyword struct is not used in super. The keyword struct is not used in C++. Okay, that's one. Any other difference? So the first difference is struct keyword is necessary to define a structure variable. Struct keyword is not necessary to define a structure variable. What difference do you see here? Or no, there's no difference here. It's almost pretty much the same, but one of them is wrong. The other one is right. I don't see anybody on the chat box. Yeah, good one, Nishchay Tojwal Rima. In struct keyword is not used in C++. Awesome. What about this particular program? No one? Okay. So here int x is equal to 7. In C, it is actually wrong. Yeah, it should not be defined in, yeah. But printf is not used in C++. Printf I've not used no anywhere in C++. No, it's cout. Yeah. Okay. But whereas if I talk about C++, this is allowed. Okay, I can initialize structure members. They're called structure members, no member variables, right? So these members can be initialized inside the structure only. Okay, it will not be an error. You can try it on a compiler, it will work. So data members can, oh yeah, they're called data members, member variables or data members. Data members cannot be initialized directly inside the structure. Data members can be initialized directly inside a structure. Okay, that's one major difference. Oh, next one. What other difference do you see here? So one of them is wrong. Which is wrong here? There's no difference. One of them is wrong. That's it. Both the programs are same. So Prashant and which well were right. C++ does not support static. C++ does support static. The problem is you cannot have a static variable inside C. Okay, inside a structure, sorry, not inside C, inside the structure you cannot have a static variable. Okay, so data members cannot be static, data members can be static in C++ structure. We'll see this now. What is the difference? I mean, again, in this case I should ask you what will be the output. Yeah. What is the size of a okay, I'll put it right in front of you. What is the size of an empty structure in C? What is the size of an empty structure in C++? Okay, empty structure, 4 bytes in C. It's an empty structure. Why 4 bytes, Prashant? A nice one, Varshita. We cannot define data members as static inside C++. Okay. 0 for both. Okay, so answer is 0 for both. Actually, in C it is 0. Okay, the empty structure is 0, but an empty structure in C++ is of size 1 byte. Okay, that's a difference. There must be some difference, or else why would I be asking you this question if it's 0 for both? So size of an empty structure in C is 0 bytes, size of an empty structure in C++ is 1 byte. So now what's the difference? Rima, that is how it is designed. Now I cannot tell you why, because that's how it is designed, C++. So it is designed to give 1 byte for a structure. I cannot give you an exact reason because I mean there are particular users when it comes to class. Basically, okay, I don't know if I should tell you about class right away, but for an empty class it should be 1 byte, and structure is something similar to a class. So even structure, I mean the features are lesser here, but they made even that 1 byte, the empty structure as 1 byte. That's the reason actually. It cannot be defined as a structure, no? Yeah, so you cannot have a function inside a member. Functions are not allowed inside a structure here. Okay, so that's the error here. So you cannot have a function inside a structure, whereas you can have a function inside structure in C++. So allowed instructor member functions are allowed in a structure. So when it comes to data types, that is what do you call our primary data types, it's pretty much the same. Integer takes 4 bytes, character takes 1 byte, floating point takes 4 bytes, double floating point takes 8. There's something called as void, which does not take any size. Then we have something called as void character. Okay, we'll discuss about void character and boolean as the session goes forward. So void character takes 2 or 4 bytes, and then boolean takes 1 byte. Boolean is basically the truth value. I guess boolean you already know. It's either true or false. There are two values it can take, and it takes 1 byte. So it's either 1 or 0 when it comes to boolean. 1 is truth, 0 is false. Modifiers we already saw, like sign modifiers and size modifiers. So in size modifiers we have long and short. In sign modifier we have signed and unsigned. So if I add these will be the other data types that you have. So long end, short end, unsigned end, signed end, unsigned short end, all these modifiers. So I don't want to discuss much. This is exactly same as what we have in C. Okay. Next we'll come to the important part of our class today that is supposed to start with. So C++ has 6 features that makes it unique from C. So what are these 6 features? Or what are how many of, okay, before going with this, I know there are people from various streams, but I guess there are people from IT, IS or CS. They would have gone through C++, and probably EC people would have gone through C++. So others, I don't know if you have learned C++ in your regular curriculum or regular subjects. So for people who know, let's see how much you know. So there are 6 features of C++, or I can say 6 object-oriented features. So what are the 6 object-oriented features that we have in C++? There is 6, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. Yeah, polymorphism, inheritance, good one. Just like I'm going in reverse order, but that's okay, huh? Anything else? So class, object, abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. And modularity, polymorphism, okay. Anything that I missed here? Dynamic binding, message passing. Okay. Yeah, I mean, these are the basic features. Dynamic binding, yeah, these are the advanced features that will. I don't know if you'll be learning that in 2 days. Let's see if you have any advanced sessions. Then yeah, modularity is nothing but class and objects. Okay, for people who did not understand what modularity is, it's basically the class and objects. Okay, Nishchita has made it very complicated, but yeah, in simple words, class and objects. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start off with something very simple, classes. Okay. So let's take a car. Okay. So these are the various brands of car that I know. Yeah. I mean, there'll be many more cars with different names. Okay. So they all share something similar. What is it? If I tell about a car, these are all different brands of car. But everything, all these brands have something similar, or all these things have something similar. The name car. Okay. Yeah, the name car, obviously. Anything else? Okay, all of them are cars. Okay. They have a common connection. That is, they, if it's a regular car, they'll definitely have four wheels. They'll have some speed limit. There'll be some mileage range. It'll work on a particular engine size, right? So these are the common features that every car will have. Maybe the value might differ, but yeah, its function basically that is pretty much same for all the car. So car is a class, okay, whose objects are these different brands. You'll have some common features that all the objects will have, and those objects can have some different features also apart from the main class. So class car, and these are the different brands which are the objects of this class, right? So this is how we define class and objects. I mean, this is not the typical definition of objects, but it'll make you understand class and objects in a better way, I believe. So so if I want to write features of a car, let's say it has four wheels, there's some speed limit, and there's some mileage. Functions of a car, and involved with the functions of a car, it can increase speed, increase speed, and you can apply brakes. So is this common for all the brands that I mentioned, or all the brands of car that I mentioned? So if people who have not studied C++, class, I'll not say it's a replacement, but it is almost similar to structure. Okay, there are some advancements in classes. Okay, but it is pretty much the same. So in a structure also we could have variables. No structure. We call them member variables or data members. So in class we have these data members, and then we have member functions. In structure we could not have functions, but in class we can have functions. So here data members are my four wheels, my speed limit, my mileage, whereas my functions are increasing the speed and applying the brakes. The syntax is almost similar to that of a structure. So class car, that's my class name, and then I have data members and the member functions, and I close it with a semicolon. So guys, if you're finding it difficult or you're not able to understand any time between the session, please let me know. I'll try to explain it in a different way. I'll get it as simple as possible, make it as simple as possible, but if you're still not able to understand, let me know. So 4-wheel speed limit and mileage are data members or properties, and entry, speed, apply, brakes are member functions. Okay, so I've written a class. Just forget about what this public is right now. Just remember, for every class you write it, all the members or the functions what you write, you mention public. Okay, I'll explain you what public is later. So class is only a prototype. Okay, so no storage is assigned when we define a class. For example, if you remember, if I define a structure, some amount of storage was assigned to a structure, right? But when it comes to class, no storage will be assigned. If I define a class, if I write a class, no storage will be assigned. So class is a user-defined function, similar to what we had in C, that is structures and unions. So same there, memory was assigned when a structure. Sorry, even then, I guess memory was not assigned. Memory was assigned only when structure variables were defined, right? So same here, the same with classes also. Right, so we'll see the next part. So in order to access the storage, or in order to access the functions and the data members, we need something. So in order to access them, we need objects. Okay, in structure we had something called as structure variables. Here we call them objects. For example, in a class car, Audi is a object. So Audi will have all these features of that of a class car. So now data will be assigned to that particular object. For example, 2 integer variables, so 8 bytes will be assigned. Okay, so Audi an object, let's say Audi dot mileage is 60 and Audi dot speed limit is 250. Similarly, this is how I assign multiple objects to a class. Okay, all 3 Audi, Ford, Benz. So I can have any number of objects. I can also have objects that are arrays. Any doubts until now, guys? Did you understand how class works and object works? So in short, when a class is created, no memory is allocated, but when an object is created for that particular class, memory will be allocated. For example, let's see this program here. So I'm creating a class called person, which has uh, variable called a string. I'm sorry, string called name, and then a integer variable called as age, and then I'm creating a object p1, which is my object, and then I'm taking the input of from the user using cin. Just make sure you see the syntax of cin. Cin is the replacement for scanf. Okay, so I'm taking the input from the user for name and age. Then I'm printing the output. So see the second cout statement, how I'm taking the input, uh, the variable, and then how I'm printing something, some text. So that is very important to understand. So p1.name is the object that object variable that I'm printing. Okay, h.age is the text that I'm printing. p1.age is the other object variable that I'm printing. Right, so make sure you go through the syntax well, because that is important here. You will see another program here. So what is happening here? So I've created a class called person. I have variables called as name, age, then I have a function called as display. Okay, and then I'm creating an object called as p1. p1.name, p1.age is taken. Then I'm calling the function. Okay, display. So, see the difference from the previous program and this one? Here I'm calling the function for the class. We call them, okay, if I go with the old linguistics, we used to call them structure variables or variables. Okay, when it comes to C++, all the variables inside a class are called data members. Okay, and the functions inside the class are called member functions. So if I ever use that, that is what it means. Okay, so don't get confused with the linguistics here. So we'll move on to the next one. So I usually like to call class as the blueprint for an object. So class is a blueprint of an object. So class, this is the syntax of a class name, access specifiers, which I asked you to ignore. That was public in our previous programs. Okay, we'll talk about access specifiers in detail. Then we have data members and member functions. So this is how a class is, syntax of a class, I can call this. Right. Object is an instance of a class. Okay, that's the technical definition of a object. So object is a syntax of a class with a physical entity because a memory will be allocated to it. So if I mean, the reason I'm doing this particular difference is because you get such questions a lot when you go to interviews. Difference between class and object. So just know this. So container, collection of variables and functions. Object, instance of a class. No memory allocated during declaration. Memory is allocated during declaration. Only one class definition, only once in the program. For one class, multiple objects can be created. make a note of this and then we'll move on. Now we'll talk about member functions in class, or what functions we write into the class, those functions. So if you see the class here, I have a member function called as getVolume, okay, which is returning the value for length into breadth into height. So member function defined inside the class. So this is something called as member function which is defined inside a class. I can also define member functions outside the class. For example, in this case, okay, here I've declared the member function, okay, double getVolume void, but I'm defining it outside the class. So just see the syntax how to define a member function outside the class. So double box, double is a return type, box is my class name, getVolume void return, then pretty much the same. So did you understand the difference between this and so this particular colons, two colons what I use, they're called as, anyone in the chat, what are they called? No one, no? They're called something called a scope, yeah, scope resolution operators. Okay, so they have like major three uses. So one of them is to define a member function of the class outside the class. Okay, other uses will be going through them once we learn. We'll be learning scope resolution in detail. That's when we'll understand the scope resolution better. Okay, so in order to define a function outside the class, we need to use scope resolution operator. Okay. So in order to define a function, the return type, the class name, the scope resolution operator, and the function name. That's how I define a function outside the class. Any doubts until now, guys? Class and objects. I thought this was the simple way to explain your class and objects. So any doubts in class and objects, please let me know, or else we'll move on to the next set of features in C++. Yeah, good one Lakshmi, good one Avinash. So next we'll go to encapsulation, but before that, no doubts. Okay, so what is encapsulation? Anyone? People have already studied. Let's see. binding of class and objects. Oh, nice one. Is it like a Google definition? Because that pretty much sounds like a Google definition. Anyways, if it's your own, well, good. So I pretty much put it as data encapsulation is wrapping up of data and functions in one single unit. That is one class. Okay. So or I can put it as I'll give you a real world example. I mean, not the coding world, but a real world example where let's talk about pharmacy. So tablets. So there was a time when we had to have different tablets for different. Even now we need to have for certain sickness, but they have encapsulated most of these tablets. For example, now the tablets for cold is also the tablet for fever and other stuff. So it's multi usage. So that's how they encapsulate it. So that's how they have actually come up with this term encapsulation, because they've clubbed so many sicknesses into one, and they've like put it in one single unit, right? So that's encapsulation. Wrapping of data and functions, which will type the same thing that I've displayed on the screen. Okay. Or he wrote it and then I displayed, I don't know. Okay, so what I wanted to say is encapsulation is a feature which is very specific to object oriented languages, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So that is encapsulation. Thing is, when you go to PIs, they'll ask you what is encapsulation. So I mean, you'll definitely give them this, I'm pretty sure. Okay, wrapping of data and functions in one single unit, or like Prashant says, binding of class and objects. Okay, but apart from this, sometimes they also ask you, okay, how will you explain it to a layman, or how will you explain it to a child? So in such cases, explaining encapsulation, so you need to come with some real world examples, like the one I gave you, like tablets and stuff. So I mean, you can use that example, or you can come up with your own examples. That's up to you. But please make sure you'll be able to explain encapsulation, because these are types of questions they actually ask. Okay, no matter what the company is, if you say you know C++, or if you say you know object oriented programming, then they'll definitely ask you such questions. Okay, so we'll move to the next feature, that is abstraction. So what is abstraction? Anyone? Yeah, abstraction is hiding the data. Okay, any other example, any other definition? Good one, Bhumika. And I guess a lot of people have joined us recently, so they're hiding unnecessary details from the user. Correct, Rima? So people have joined us recently. In the beginning of the chat, I've posted a Google Forum link, so that is to post your attendance. So please make sure you click on the link and update your attendance there. Abstraction is hiding irrelevant details from the user, or access specifiers are the main pillars of implementation of abstraction. So what are these access specifiers? I said we'll go through these access specifiers in a short time. So now we're coming to access specifiers. So access specifier is something that gives us the feature of abstraction in object oriented programming, right? Okay, I just remembered. Why is it oops, OOPS, and why not OOP? What's the abbreviation? Can somebody tell me? So what does S stand for? Out of random, I remembered this particular question. That's why I'm asking you. We'll continue with what we're doing, but can somebody tell me what does S stand for? It's oops, right? OOPS. Right. Even I would have mentioned oops somewhere. What is it? Ignore the background noise of the flight. Yeah, even I would have mentioned it as oops. No, I mentioned it as oop here. Yeah, oops. Yeah. Yeah. Systems. Okay. Any other abbreviation for S? Ah, yeah. Object oriented programming. What is this? It's oops, no, always. You never write OOP, you write OOPS, right? And Manusha deletes. Yes, you did not. I don't know why people are so obsessed with deleting your messages. So, object oriented programming systems. Is that it? What's the abbreviation? Come on, guys. I'm right, no? They don't write it as OOP, no? They write it as OOPS only, no? Or I'm living in a different world where they write it as OOP. I don't know, I'm not sure. Structures, okay. Let's see what are the answers. Where are the smart people of the class? System, okay. Guys, it is object oriented programming, okay. S is just a culture that has come up with the usage because they couldn't call it OOP, so that's why they started calling it as OOPS, and that's how the culture has started. Or the so anytime somebody asks you what is the abbreviation, it is object oriented programming. Okay, don't tell object oriented system or structure or software, or there are a lot of definitions that people give nowadays. So it's just object oriented programming. Okay, so S does not have anything, it's just an add-on. It's actually supposed to be caps OOP and then S, yeah, like Krishna says there. Yeah, not apostrophe S, just a S. Okay, so it does not have any abbreviation for S. Okay, because I've seen interviewers asking this question a lot of times, so just know this. Okay, anyway, so we'll move on to what we were doing currently. That was abstraction, no? Yeah, we were discussing abstraction. I went way ahead. Very good. So yeah, abstraction, we have, in order to implement abstraction in C++, we have something called as access specifiers. Okay, so before that, all members of a class can be accessed. Okay, within the class there's no restriction, but from outside the class, how do I access the members of the class? I'm talking members are nothing but member variables and data members, that is, and member functions. Okay, both of them. So we have three access specifiers when it comes to C++ in particular. So they are public, private and protected. Okay, so these define how a variable or a member function can be accessed from outside the class. Right, so first we'll see what's private. So what is private? So access is completely denied for outsiders. Okay, we'll see an example in the form of a code. So here if you see private double radius public, that function called as compute underscore area. So I'm creating an object called as, sorry, object is created called as obj, and radius I'm assigning a value called as 1. Okay, but double is, sorry, this radius is private, so radius declared as private, that's why I'll not be able to access it. Okay, so like I mentioned, so any objects or functions outside the class cannot be accessed by private members, cannot access the private members. So in this case, will it work? Yeah, this is inside the class, radius is defined inside the class, right? So I can work on it, so it will work. So can be accessed only by the functions inside the class and friend function. So this is actually the problem with learning object oriented programming. Okay, because if I have to teach you one thing, I'll have to tell you about one more thing, friend functions. Again, let's just ignore that we saw some, I mean, just let's remember that we saw something called as friend functions here. Okay, we'll discuss friend functions in the future, like, okay, but can be accessed only by the functions inside the class. Okay, we'll talk about friend functions later. because if I start talking about friend functions, then I'll have to start defining various other things also. So we'll go in a order. Okay. So remember this, when it comes to private access specifier, any object functions outside the class cannot access the private members, can be accessed by the functions inside the class and friend functions. What is happening here now? So double radius I've not mentioned any access specifier, right? So by default what it will take it as? If I don't mention, will I get an error or will I get an output? By default it's public, okay. I so wish by default it was public. Program would have been so much easy. Ujjwal, Bhumika, Rima. One second, what streams are you guys from? Ujjwal, Bhumika, Rima. Okay, so you never had C++, is it? Ujjwal? In EC, do you have C++? Yes, okay. Fine. Guys, have you, I mean, now, you have, yes, yes for you. Because I remember EC students studying C++ at some point of time. Probably in the probably in the 7th sem you study. I'm not sure. Okay. Anyways, okay. So I was in under assumption that you would have already studied. Anyways, probably have not. Anyways, so by default, the member functions will always be private. Okay. You had C++ in PU. Okay, great. Even I had C++ in PU, but I don't know what I studied there. And they just taught me C, the same syntax of C, what is there in C++. Anyways. So remember, by default, what is it? The access specifier is a private. Okay. So how do you access a private data member? So if you see this particular program, I have a class called car. I have a private member called as speed. Okay, and then I've created objects called as Audi and Alto. So Audi, I've set the speed to, sorry, I'm calling a function called as set speed, sending a variable 250 there. Again calling a function called as set speed, again sending a variable 150. So it goes to the function there. Okay, so in set speed, what is happening? Speed, the I value is taken, and I'm returning get speed. So this is how I access private data members. Okay, one way is to directly access them through the class, but if I want to print it outside the class, then this is how I access private data members. So so we need to create a function to get and set the value of a private data member can be only accessed when by the function inside the class and friend function, like I already told you, right? So we need to create functions in order to take that value from the private data and also to return it to the main function. And those functions, those member functions should be public, or else again that will be a problem. So next we have something called as protected. Okay, so what is protected? That's the second type of access specifiers that we have. Protect members of functions are very similar to private members, but they can be accessed by any subclass or derived class. So the usage of protected is very limited when it comes to C++. Okay, not C, sorry, in C++ the usage is very limited. It only is used when subclasses comes into picture, but once we discuss subclasses we'll talk about protected in a better way. Okay, so just remember the second variable as a second access specifier is protected. Okay, almost similar to private. So once we discuss subclass or derived class, we'll learn it. So third access specifier is public. So we'll see how public works. So it can be accessed by the objects. Okay, so all the class members declared under public will be available to everyone. Public members can be accessed by other classes too, can be accessed by anywhere in the program using direct member access operator with the objects of that class. So only with the objects you can actually access the class members or class functions. Okay, using an access specifier called as dot. We'll see an example. So public int speed, int main. I'm taking the value for int speed using an object called as Audi and Alto, and I'm printing it. So direct. There's no Joel. There's no much headache here when it's public. Right, so we'll move on to access using the direct members dot okay, the access specifier dot use. Okay, we'll just see an example of difference here between class and object. So what's the difference you see here? Sorry, class and structure. Anyone? Chat. Why is there such low turnout today? Because I remember class strength going about 120, 140, 150 at times. How the memory are allocated in class? Structure uses padding concepts. What about class? Uh, Padding is actually assigning more memories. In C, we do not have any concept called as padding. I'm sorry, in C++ we do not have any concept called as padding. Okay, that is in structure we have. I'm not sure if we have any such feature in C++ because memory will see structure padding is. I'll have to give you an example. I'll simply put it in very simple words. Sometimes the memory allocated for a structure is more than the size of the members of the structure. Okay, so in such cases we use some techniques like pragma pack and stuff to avoid allocating more memory. Okay, this happens in C. Okay, but does not much change when you're doing a placement for a, I mean, does not much change the fact that you're attending a placement where they do not worry about this allocating more memory unless you're going to some data analytics company. But in C++, we do not have structure padding, I mean, or something called as class padding, okay, where more memory is allocated. So I don't think so we have such thing. I'll have to just check on this. But as far as I know, there's nothing called as padding in C++. Okay, I'll just check on that, Prashant Gowda. Okay. Anything that you saw here? So I'll simply say in class and structure. So by default, all the member classes are private. So output will be an error when it comes to class. But in a structure, by default, all the structure are public. All the structure variables are public. Okay. So the output will be what is it? 1 here. Right? Any other questions? We'll see the challenges in the afternoon session. I have a couple of MCQs. Okay. I remember I would have told you that we'll discuss couple of topics in the future sessions for C. One was array pointers. What are the other topics? If you can remember, please let me know. Yeah, call by reference. Yeah, I remember that. Call by reference. Yeah, anything else? Okay. Any doubts in C that you have, guys? Except we have not discussed a lot of programs. I remember that. So I'll try to dedicate the last half an hour for programming every day. I guess we have class till tomorrow, if I'm not wrong. So both the days, I'll try to dedicate at least half an hour or 45 minutes in the last for programming. Okay, but any other doubts in C, like pointers, structures, arrays, all that? So any doubts, please let me know, because I remember the last class we had a lot of disturbance in the background and stuff. So, and a lot of power issues and internet issues. So any such issues, please let me know in the chat so that I can cover up. No, nobody seems to be having any doubt. Okay, guys, you can post your attendance. I mean, are you supposed to post your attendance in the chat? Do you do? I mean, have you been doing it since I left? I don't know. Are you supposed to do it, or you're just supposed to only put it on the link? Okay, they used to give the link, so do we have to? Okay, so I've given the link. No, I'll give the link again if you have not got it. Give me a moment. I'll just give you the link. Yeah, for people who were there in the beginning, I have given you the link. Some people joined late, so if you have not got the link, I'm just sending you the link again. Just give me a moment. So I've posted the link. So if you have not posted your attendance, just post it in the link again. Any other doubts, guys? You have any questions? Do you have any questions? No doubts, huh? in that case, I'll see you in the afternoon session, guys. Did you understand what we did today? Because most of you have not, like my slides are prepared for people who have already at least had a basic knowledge of C++. So if you've not got the entire picture, please let me know. Right, anyways, thank you so much, guys. We'll see you in the afternoon. Yeah, please copy that link, and if you're not marked your attendance, please, I'll be closing the stream in another 2 minutes.